So today we have on our show Rishubh Satiya, the founder of Plix, a startup on the mission to make nutrition fun. Plix has a wide portfolio of plant-based, cruelty-free, vegan superfood products that span across categories like weight management, hair and beauty, sleep, and lifestyle nutrition categories. One more interesting thing about Plix is that their products come in a reusable and recyclable packaging. Rishabh is a fairly young entrepreneur who passed out of IIT Roorkee in 2016, and in just 2 years, he started Plix in 2018. Before revealing any further, I would want you all to listen to the story from the man himself. Welcome to the show, Rishabh.
Hi, Anuradha. Nice to have you. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And happy to share my journey of how I built Plix, etc., and take this conversation forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rishabh. But even before we begin, I would like you to give our audience a sense of where Plix is today in terms of scale and traction.
So today, I think it's been around 3 to 4 years since Plix has started on this journey. And I think it's been an incredible journey today. Plix is roughly around, I think if you have read in the papers, also more than 150 plus crore ARR in terms of revenue and is scaling month on month. Predominantly online, and we just started building offline. We are a brand which focuses on making nutrition fun and tasty, right? That is the entire thesis. And we're also launching today personal care products, right? So the entire concept is beauty within and outside, right? So how you consume nutrition inside, and also you need what you call to look good on the outside. So you also have topicals at this point of time. The thesis when we started to launch and build Plix was India, right? In India, nutrition is very intimidating to users, right? And we had first started off, you would see there were only brands which are selling protein, like the Muscle Blaze, the GNCs of the world, etc., which seemed very intimidating because there are a lot of bodybuilders in their, what do you call, in their posters, their branding. And as an individual, when you look to consume that, right, you would be like, this is supposed to be meant for me, right? I don't want these muscles. What do these have? Are they clean? Are they natural, right? And it was the genesis to start Plix. And I was like, while there are brands catering to this need, there's no one who's catering to the millennial everyday needs of people today, right? Who is just looking for something less intimidating, more clean. We had seen a lot of traction in the US where clean, natural, plant-based brands had got a lot of what do you call traction and were doing phenomenally well. But there was no organized place doing that in the market. And with that thesis, we had launched Plix. And so we launched a clean, natural protein, which was tasty and which was very less intimidating, friendly to the user to do well. And that did phenomenally well, right, for us. And we got an early love. But eventually what we realized is we want to also cater to products which are in like bigger TAMs, like weight loss, beauty, right? And we want to focus on general health and wellness, which are bigger TAMs, not only protein, right? That's why we realized that we need to, while people consume a lot of tablets, right? And when you consume tablets, what you understand is that these products, when you consume, you feel you're not healthy, right? And they're not tasty to consume with, right? And most products are not even tasty, right? So what we want to do is we want to change the notion of that. And we're like, let's make nutrition fun. Let's make nutrition tasty. And that's what we launched effervescence, right? So we took a very boring ingredient like apple cider vinegar, right? Which is, if you consume vinegar, right, you know how bad it tastes. And it smells awful. If you smell it, you just put yourself away, right? Right? And consuming that every day is like pushing yourself to a crime, right? So we were like, let's make this fun and interesting. And what we took is we took apple cider vinegar, we dehydrated it into a powder format, made it into a tablet, which turns into a delicious fizzy drink, right? And if you consume that drink, you get all the benefits of apple cider vinegar and without the sour taste and palatable, right? It's a great fizzy drink to consume. And we got a lot of love with that, right? And that's what we realized is this is what we should do, right? We should take boring ingredients, make it tasty, make it in a format which is portable, tasty, and people look forward to consuming it. And that's where we launched a lot more products in our effervescence space. Right? We have the apple cider vinegar and effervescence, we have ashwagandha and effervescence. And these are all world's first new innovative products where we take boring ingredients and make them tasty. And we received a lot of customer love, right? Because now people are consuming, we're looking forward to consume nutrition. It's clean, it's tasty, it's something you want to consume every day, it's functionally helping you, and it's a great tasty beverage. In fact, a lot of our customers carry the apple cider vinegar, tube, along with them wherever they go. And instead of having a cola, right, they'll consume this because it has no sugar, it helps them functionally. And that's where I realized the larger genesis of this brand is to even look at drinks as a category, right? And have functional, tasty drinks for people to do. So that's why we are at Plix, and we received a lot of love from customers. And we built a phenomenally good brand with our hero product being an apple cider vinegar, which does phenomenally well and has strong repeats and good customer love.
Awesome. So, Rishabh, when you were talking about your product so passionately, now you're a 20-something founder. You are so young and still you've achieved so much, 150, 200 crore ARR, right? Most of our listeners would be thinking that this guy is a superhuman. I want to go back a little further and I want to listeners to know, like, what is your background, where you come from, what does your family look like, what was your early childhood like, where did you go to school, what did you do in college, what gave you this superpower to become this super entrepreneur today?
I'll tell you, right, it's not that, right? When I started Plix, my goal was to do like one order a day. This is what I did, right? I will do one order a day, AOV of 2,500, with decent margins of 50% plus. I'll make 1,250, and I was like, I'm going to run this business. That's the thesis I had, right? I was like, small baby steps. And right, honestly, there are a lot of founders who come from this background or well connected with the ecosystem. I wasn't one of them, right? I had no idea. I had no idea of the VC world. I never even thought about raising capital. Right? I come from a family which is a business family where where my dad runs a very traditional business, right? And
City,
no one does a corporate job.
which
right?
city are you from, Rishabh?
We're from Mumbai. My
Ayun.
dad runs a printing and packaging company, right? Very traditional business, very family-run unit. And no one, in fact, in my family would really be doing a corporate job also, right? I was the first one to actually do a corporate job after I finished, right? A proper corporate job. So, right? So this was not inbred into me, right? I didn't have access to this entire ecosystem which is there today and everything. So I'll just go back, right? But this is what I was, right? To be honest. And there was no goal to build what I built. And but what happens is you will learn as you go forward. I completed my education from St. Mary's ICSE, very average kid, 80% I got into KC
Average,
College.
80%.
80%.
Yeah,
I
these
think 80%
days
is
80%
average.
is considered
Nowadays, in 2006, I think it was yet decent.
Hmm.
But I think now, like I see kids are rolling out 10th and 11th, and no one talks less than like the mid 90s, right? Like 90 to 95 is the new normal, and exceptional smart students to 95, 97, 98, right? This is what I've seen in boards, right?
Yeah, true.
So, in 81, I don't think KC will entertain you also. I was in KC Science, right? I'm serious. So, Abhi to KC will say bye-bye to you. I think KC Commerce will also not accept you at 81 today, right? That's why I say, at least, but yeah. So I did my college. Again, I was not someone who was really smart. I was one of the backbenchers. Then after that, I was also in the entire runway. Some लोग engineering करते थे, तो मैंने भी engineering कर लिया. I was like, and honestly, I think for me, engineering was 4 years. I didn't really understand much. I wasn't very passionate into like computer science or coding. I think that's one regret I have, right? Tech is not my strong suit even today. Why I'm an IT engineer, it's not my strong suit today. And I finished my engineering, barely scrapped out. And honest, I had multiple KTs in the first year. Like I'll tell you honestly, in my fourth semester, I had to give 12 exams, right?
Wow.
Usually we give 5. I had 7 KTs. I give 12. I'll be honest. And there's a point that I had to give back-to-back exams. I did not give one exam. I was like, let me skip this and let me prioritize and clear the all 11. So I cleared all 11, and then one exam which I skipped, I cleared in my 5th semester. Just to let you know, right? So very average. But I think prioritization I learned even there, right? I took a very strong call not to give so I can clear the rest 11. And then I think got very average marks and finished my education from VIT. Right? And then I worked for 2 years in sales, where I realized how sales is done. And then at the same time, I gave my CET, got into IT Roorkee, right? And I think that's where I got a little bit serious in life. And that's where I realized, like I want to do something. When I got connected to the ecosystem, a lot more individuals were talking about startups and, like growing themselves, building, looking forward to their career. And that's the first time I left home, to be honest, right? I moved away from my town in Bombay and went to IT Roorkee to stay in hostel. And I think it was a great experience there. Since I'd done sales, I was very great in communication. And IT Roorkee had a lot of engineers who didn't have a lot of exposure to the world, were early freshers and all. A lot of people looked up to me for some reason because it was great to talk to and build a story, etc. And I was spearheading a couple in the placement committee. And I got great exposure there talking to corporates. And I enjoyed, right, for 2 years. I got placed into a consulting job. In 2 years in consulting, I learned to understand, to look at TAM, markets, etc. And that's where I was like, this is a great space to be in. In fact, I was not even looking at launching plant-based nutrition. The thesis was to launch beverages.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Launch functional beverages. I had looked at brands like Raw Presley had scaled a lot and raised a lot of capital. And I looked at brands in the US like Kevita, which had done well. So during my 2 years in consulting, I was looking at this. But I also realized that building beverages, right, is very expensive in India. मतलब cold chain build करना पड़ेगा. And luckily I was, since my 2 years in consulting helped me understand कि यार क्या, what is required to build a business, how to look at TAM, how to look at industry. And I realized quickly that beverage will be something very difficult to build, right? And then that's why I was like, maybe let's look at something else. And we looked at plant-based nutrition. And that's where I was like, this is where no one's building it today in India. There are very few players doing it. I know that this is a great place to do it. Good traction in the US. Saw the clear market gap and decided to double down and, build this out. So that's my story of my entire education, which is there. Right? I'm absolutely, like you said, that is no superhuman. In fact, I had not even corporate connections, not exceptionally smart. But I think 2 years of consulting did help me understand TAM kaise hota hai, market kya hai, where to dive deep. And I just took baby steps from there onwards, right? And decided to build it out. In fact, so that's what the entire thesis of me leading to launch Plix.
You were about to say something. I interrupted you, I think.
That was even my first time I went for looking to raise capital, right? Was when I got invited when I was scaling the brand Plix, right? Into like a Mumbai Angels conversation. And that's where I realized that this ecosystem exists where you can, where I made some deck. Since I was in consulting, I didn't know how to make a deck. I made my own deck and I presented. And I got a lot of love from the guys there. And I realized that, wow, people want to invest and people will value my company so much, right? Those numbers were like, I was like, wow, someone's valuing Plix at like, I think that time I was getting valued at 10 crores or something because people were ready to pay. I was like, wow. So I was amazed too, right? At these numbers in crores, it was quite fascinating. So that's where I got introduced into this. And I was like, let me create a better deck. Then I started reaching out to more VCs. And that's where everything opened up for me. And that's how I realized this is how it's done. And having these conversations with venture capitalists really opened out how to build Plix into a bigger brand.
Got it. Very interesting, Rishubh. In fact, the thing that you talked about, in terms of kids not considering 80% good anymore. I remember back in 2000, when I was in 10th standard, my father actually distributed sweets in his office because I got 85%. So 85% at that point was considered great. And today 95% also kids come crying that will not get into good schools.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Very interesting. And also I really like the fact that you started the business not to raise capital, which is now, if you see, kids prepare their plan first and reach out to investors first and then think about building a business. You started with a mindset where you did not even know that such an ecosystem exists or would value your offering, would like to invest in your offering. So that's really interesting.
Absolutely. I started Plix with honestly a 10 lakh rupee loan, right? From friends and family, maybe put in 4-5 lakhs on my own. But that's it, right? I started with barely any capital, built very frugally. And that was the thesis.
And if I'm correct, Rishubh, when you started this journey, you were alone. And along the way, you met your co-founder, Akash, as well. And that's also a very interesting story that I would want our listeners to know.
So in fact, me and Akash were running two separate brands. Akash was running Olina, I was running Plix. And we both were scaling up pretty well. And that thesis was I was struggling to get talent on board, to really build the company further. Right? And that's where me and Akash decided that I spoke to him and I told him, let's merge and let's build this together. Right. And that's where we were like, you know what, this makes a lot more sense. Right. And me and Akash merged. And trust me, right, I think having a co-founder like Akash, right, and that really helped. Right. The moment me and him combined, we smashed it.
Wow.
Right. We went from doing I think both of us are at similar scale at that point of time. And we did 10x in 1 year from the moment we combined, because 1 and 1 doesn't make 2, right? 1 and 1 makes 11. And having a co-founder like him, right? Then the best part was me and him were extremely different personalities, right? I was great at marketing. He was great at finance and ops. He knew how to build product very well. I knew how to sell the product. So we really helped each other, very different mindsets and abilities, which were needed to build a company. And that's how it helped us scale, right? So that was the conversation between me and Akash. Two different companies decided to merge, and that was phenomenal. I think if me and him had never merged, I don't think we would have ever reached the scale or built what we have built, right? So it's always required, I feel, it's important to have a co-founder who can help build with you. Otherwise, the journey alone is something which I will never take.
Correct. And how did that conversation start? Because from what I know, you guys were competing against each other. So how did you guys come together? Were you always friendly? Or did it occur to both of you one day, one fine day that, okay, let's merge?
So I think the thing was, he and him were competing in one space, like I said, right? And um, I was facing issues in scaling up talent, etc. And he was also facing similar issues, right? So the thesis was that let's do one thing, let's merge and build this together. And I think Akash was also as open-minded as I was. And we realized that, like I said, right, 1 and 1 makes 11 and go forward with it.
Got it. And once you guys came together, was there any change in the way you were building businesses? Because you were both coming from different ideologies, although you were playing in the same market. I'm sure there must have been some initial, friction in terms of how you believe a business should be built versus how he believes.
Yeah, so that journey is there, right? So when me and Akash decided to go ahead, we built certain ground rules, right? This is what he will do, this is what I will do, this is how we'll build the company forward. Akash is extremely passionate about what he builds, right? He was very clear that I will only build a plant-based company. Akash, in fact, is a person who follows a vegan lifestyle, right?
Oh,
And
nice.
he's built a company with pure passion, right? He wanted to spread awareness of plant-based living, etc. So he was very clear in what he wanted to build, right? And I was absolutely okay to go on with his journey also. So we had built very clear ground rules, but this is what we will do, right? This is how we'll build it. This is what he will look at. This is how I will look at, right? We had a lot of conversations with each other, and it wasn't one fine day I called him and all. We spent a lot of time together understanding how it is, how we will work, laying out the ground rules pretty well, right? And I think the biggest factor is trust, right? We trusted each other, and that all of that led to then understanding and then building Plix the way it is, right? So those conversations were very had. And yes, I think everyone has to take the leap of faith. And I think me and Akash, for us, the best thing is even today, right? We trust each other blindly. We have our backs, right? And it's me and him against whoever it is.
Nice. And once you guys came together, were you still bootstrapping? Had you already raised funds, or
No.
how much later you raised your first round?
So yeah, exactly, right? So here also, honestly, you spoke about, like founders look to raise capital. And all I'll tell you is Plix is not raise capital. We are bootstrapped. Then we are bootstrapped even after we combined, right? We
Okay.
bootstrapped there till around we hit a 3 crore monthly revenue number.
Wow.
Okay. And for till that period of time, we are bootstrapped. We look to build a business that's very strong in economics, right? Very frugally. The thought process was same if needed. Me and Akash would put in capital if needed. While we put, in fact, took adding loans of 50 lakhs each and put in some more capital to build the business further, right? If needed. And we scaled the business very frugally till we realized that, let's raise capital. And raising capital wasn't easy for us, right? Like I said, we were never in part of this journey. I did this one call where I entered VCs are looking forward. So I started doing it. But I very soon realized that, this is like a full-time job. So we didn't hire a banker. And it took us literally a year and a half, right? And when Plix was growing month on month, right? We did like from the 30, 40 lakh I spoke about to like 3 crores, right? We grew 10x. And
Correct.
that's when finally, after I think talking to 80 to 100 VCs, right? We were able to raise capital, right? Because we were looked as running a family business. We were looked as that, like we are entrepreneurs are not, what do you call, seasoned entrepreneurs. There were a lot of conversations were there, right? And there are already leaders in the market at that point of time who were scaling up. So I think for us, it was extremely difficult to raise capital at that point of time. But I think we went on, right? We went on doing a BAU and looking at it. And when finally we did get a check, I think it was phenomenal.
Who was your first investor, and how did that conversation got started?
So I think RPSG and Gil both came in at the same time. And you know what happens, right? So laddu foodta hai, to bahut sare laddu footte hain. So for I mean, I don't know the muhavra word, but it's that only that, when one door opens, like multiple doors start opening, right? For you. Right? So that's what happened with us, right? For the longest of time, we were not able to raise capital and no one really wanted to bite into our story, etc. Right? And they were like, the TAM is too small, or maybe what do you call this is just a COVID phase or whatever, or it's a family business, we don't believe in it or whatever. But when finally RPSG also, what do you call this, like the Plix story and was looking to invest, I think at that point of time, Guild also bought in. And I think the thesis also was that when someone is ready to back you, automatically a lot more people want to also back you, right? So we had RPSG and Guild who decided to back us. And we were like looking to raise like 10 crores. And they were like, we want to put in more capital. And we raised around 30 crores. Bhagwan deta na, chappat faad ke deta, like people say, like that's what happened with us, right? We raised a lot more. I think it was a very good decision we took, right? And Instead of raising 10, we were like, if someone's ready to put in capital, let's just take in more because it just makes more room way for us to experiment, build more. And then maybe we don't need to raise ever again, right? That was the thesis we had even that point of time. And that's what eventually happened. So that's how we raised. And I think the conversation with RPSC was great. I think Abhishek as an investor has been great. He liked the thesis. He backed us for a story. He believed us in entrepreneurs. You're like, you guys are bootstrapped, done a good job. And he had a very strong thesis on D2C, Abhishek, right? And he believed Nutra, there is no one right now, and there will be 2-3 players who will phenomenally scale, and decided to back us.
Got it. So this is really interesting because a lot of people sometimes they reach out to 5 or 10 investors and then they start giving up, saying no, I think because the feedback also gets to you, right? When you're hearing so much negative feedback, you start doubting yourself. Am I even a VCable business? Am I even doing things right? Am I the right founder to raise capital? But you guys stuck to it. You guys persevered and met 80 investors before getting your first check is simply amazing. The fact that I like about Plix is that you guys have always been very frugal, very strong about unit economics, and not burning mindlessly, which also reflects in the fact that you've raised only one round of funding and haven't been raising on and on and on. What gave you that confidence, Rishubh, that the way you and Akash were building was the right way of building businesses? Weren't you affected by all those news you were seeing every day of startups hyperscaling, burning, and raising more rounds? Did it never occur to you that I can also take the same path, same journey?
So two things I'll say, right? One is you spoke about like we had to meet a lot of people and we didn't give up, right? I think that for us, I think raising capital was not the only way to survive, right?
Correct.
So we were like, this is just part of the journey, right? We raise or we don't raise capital, we'll keep building, and that's what we did. We just kept our head down and building, and raising capital was part of the process. We got capital because honestly, me and Akash, I think when we also did it, right? I think you also never thought about raising capital. We weren't even from this background, like I said. We were like people from traditional family businesses who always build businesses without external capital, right? And build it frugally, right? That's always been a mindset कि धंधा करना है तो profit बना के करना है, right? ऐसे नहीं करना मतलब. That's what our mindset has been. That's what our parents have taught us. So the logic of burning capital was never inbred in us. And if you see that, we bootstrapped the business to a good 30, 40 crore ARR before we raised capital. So that mindset was already built in us that we will build a business with strong unit economics, right? And if we look at our industry, right, it's an extremely well-funded category, right? And we have players who've raised 100 plus crores, right? Or 200 plus crores. And this is what I believe, right? In today's world, capital is not the moat, right? It's your product, how you build a business, right? Making the unit economics is what your moat will be, because capital is freely available. And in fact, I believe that having too much capital can be downfall because you will be pushed to spend money, right? And then you start burning money mindlessly. So we didn't want to take this call, right? Since we had built a business with very strong unit economics prior to raising capital, we kept that thesis along with us, right? What we did is we did invest in talent, right? We didn't invest in mindlessly in this burning. We invested in talent because we thought that we'll learn along the way, right? We hired extremely skilled professionals who became CXOs who also taught us a lot, for me and Akash both, right? And that's where we invested. And in fact, I'll tell you, investors, right, were of the same mindset that build the business with right economics, right? You need to be at a double-digit CM, right? Look at numbers daily. Even Guild as a company focuses on not investing in hyperscaling businesses. While they like hyperscale, they'll focus on getting your fundamentals right, right? Correct. And I think we learned a lot from them. And I think our earlier mindset of building business frugality from backgrounds we also came is what the mindset was. We were never deterred by people raising multiple capital, having fancy celebrities. I think that's not what we wanted to do. We kept our head down, focused on building the right flywheel for digital and just scaling month on month with the right unit economics, right? And that's what worked for us, is what I would say.
Got it. Interestingly, you talked about talent, Rishubh, and I would like to know, in your early journey, once you guys came together, at that point, did you already have a team in place? Did you start building the team once you guys came together? What was this initial team looked like and how you built upon that over time? At what scale you hired more people?
In fact, like I'll tell you, right? Talent is something which I was only able to bring on board after we raised capital. Prior to that, it was like, for me and Akash board, it was like one-man show, right? In fact, like my first employee was an intern I hired, right? Okay. At like basically like intern at like a 5,000-7,000 salary for this graphics, right? I started off from like my wife's father's spare flat. They didn't have an office, right? That's how I started it, to be honest, right? Because I didn't want to invest and have heavy OPEX, right?
Correct.
And I think Akash also has a very similar story, right? And then I leveraged like family resources, like my dad's warehouse, my dad's factory in Bhiwandi to keep my products there. Didn't even have a proper warehouse, right? And I used his stuff to pack my goods and then dispatch to customers. That's how frugally we started, right? Literally zero OPEX. I didn't take salary for a year and a half. I used to be the customer service. In fact, my WhatsApp number one is blocked because I was like the NDR executive. I would message people if they didn't accept the order, asking them why. And I think a lot of people must have reported me. So I have two numbers now, one which is active on WhatsApp, one is not, right?
Okay.
So extremely frugally started up, didn't have talent, focused on design, I think, as this thing. And I learned everything, right? Like today, right? Whatever I've done and whatever built is being built in Plix, I've done it hands-on, right? Whether you talk about performance marketing, whether you talk about content creation, I have gone for shoots. I should be the guy who talked to influencers, done everything in my 0 to 1 journey before we raised capital, right? And understood because I didn't have the luxury to spend on talent. That's one. And also, I think that helps, right? Because once you know the 0 to 1, right? Once you know how to do performance marketing, how to create content, right? You can then build a team to do who to help, right? And you can replicate that model and then no one will faff you around.
Correct.
Right? So that was my 0 to 1 journey before. I think even Akash, my co-founder's journey was very similar, right? He used to do everything on his own, right? And once we realized our strengths, we focused on building those strengths further. And there also, we did it. In fact, even today, right, at Plix, while we'll have a team of maybe 220 plus people, right? If there is something new which I've not learned, I will get my hands dirty. I will dive deep into it. I'll understand how it is, spend more time on it, build the flywheel, then pass it down to somebody else. So that's something which we did. And that's how the talent pool was for me prior to raising capital. I think runners, right? Very interns is what we hired. No one senior, no one more than a 20,000 salary is what I had on my payroll at that point of time. Leverage family resources. After we raised capital, we started hiring senior people. So we got, what do you call, Poonam to head content, who's my CMO today. We got Kritika, who's ex-BCG, who built to build growth. We got Saurav, who had built another startup to head product, right? And in fact, like when I used to do these guys' interviews, I would prep for the interview before. Because I was like, boss, I'm hiring really senior people. But it helped. I think Guild also helped in pushing these guys to convince them on the story. And being a great salesman helps getting first talent on board. They're able to buy into the Plix story. And then they started building teams on board. And each one of them had specific skill sets, right? Which were able to build and craft teams down, which honestly helped us on our journey.
Awesome. No, in fact, this also led me to think about how at Texter, we get decks from founders who have a great founding team, 3 guys from IIT want to start up, haven't done a thing, haven't lifted their fingers at all. Come to us with a, idea stage on a paper and want capital to build the MVP. So I'm like, even if you're not going to, put your skin in the game and bootstrap till you have an MVP in place, you're going to miss out on a multiple learnings like you just talked about, right? Because once you have capital, you have the luxury to hire a team under you. You're not going to do things with your own bare hands, and you're going to miss out on so many learnings that you get along in that journey. So this was really helpful, Rishubh.
Absolutely, right. I think that's what even at Plix today, I'll tell you, right? We will, if before launching a fancy product and investing in tech, I tell my team to build things in Excel, right? On Google Sheets. Even today, see if it works, right? Do a small thesis or a small 5% pilot, right? See if it makes sense. Then I'll tell them, okay, now you have the luxury to spend 10 lakhs or 15 lakhs on building tech and development, and it makes sense, right? Then tech helps you scale. But first, I mean, the smallest thing we'll do, build an MVP, do it on Excel, do it frugally, right? So that's how you should do things. And that's what exactly, right? You don't need, even for a product or for an MVP, you don't need capital is what I would say, right? You can figure a frugal way to at least do some PMF before you scale up. And then you double down.
One more thing, Rishubh. So you've had quite an exceptional journey in terms of how fast you guys scaled, and you were always sustainable, never had to worry about the survival of the company. But I'm sure there must have been some moments along the journey where you must have felt very, very disappointed, almost feeling like giving up on the business. Would you care to share any of those moments with us?
I'll tell you, right? So while, everyone sees the glories and everything, right? Things haven't been like, and here also I'm sharing only growth journeys, etc. Right? But I think me and Akash both, right, have put in like 20 hours a day since the day we raised capital. And maybe we should put a lot of time before, but after raising capital, the pressure was real. In fact, like what happened to us is, and I think this is a lot to do with industry trends also, but what happens is Jan to July, right, is where people are wanting to be healthy and will scale rapidly, right? And then post July, what happens is festive comes in and people don't want to invest in health and wellness. So we raise capital around that same time, right? And after we raise capital from October, we were just not able to scale. It was very funny, right? And this is what happened is our investors also questioning us is when you didn't have capital, you guys grew 10x. And the moment you guys got capital, what happened is you guys were not able to grow. And we flatlined at 3 crores. Literally flatlined for 6 months. Right. Wow. And so it was extremely stressful. Like we were like, what is it going on? Right. And we went, and it was extremely, right? We were being pushed by investors. We started doubting ourselves. I remember having this one conversation where so Guild has a model where they also work with you on a weekly basis, right? So they had an associate who worked with us, who was like Skani, smart guy. His name is Mohit, right? He'd come down to office and we were figuring out how to grow, right? And he asked me a question after 6 months, 3 months of flatlining, right? Rishubh, like, how did we grow, right? And I was like, I was so dejected. I was like, I don't have an answer. I don't think we'll grow this month, right? Right. But what we did is, so that was how bad it was at one point of time. But we never gave up, right? We never went and gone on board. Like we never took the easy way out, right? Then we started discounting our products or got a celebrity on board, right? What we decided to do is we went back to the drawing board. We looked at what is working for us, what's not working for us. Did a lot of experimentation, right? Figured out like started looking at numbers a lot more closely. In fact, daily. In fact, even today, रात को at 12:30, I'll do हिसाब कि यार मैंने इतना sale किया, इतना expense है, मेरा इतना OPEX है. Am I profitable today or not? And that's something we started back in March also, right? If I'm not profitable, I'll change things. The day I'm profitable, I'll double down. Started doing things like this. And that's where we restarted, right? And we figured out what's working. And I think from there, we started scaling again, right? 12 months later, from that 3 crore number, I think today we've gone like 4x, 5x of what it is, right? Wow. So we did have those times, right? And trust me, it's been a lot of pressure, right? We used to do weekly calls with our investors where they would question us. We had a like plan versus actual. A plan and our actual were very different.
Happens to the
plan
best.
was 100, actual was 50. It was like that, right? And everything was red. But yeah, and what is happening is since you invested in team, right? Our OPEX had scaled up and we are burning a lot more capital. So that run of 30 crores we took, right, really helped us there. But I think all of it eventually, right, with team and everything, we solved the problem, right? And we didn't just what you do is throw money to solve the problem. We actually solved the problem with less capital. And then once you get the flywheel right, this is what I keep saying, right? Once you get the flywheel right, it's very easy to scale it, right? So get it right in the start with less capital and then use the capital just to scale up, right? With positive unit economics.
Correct.
Like don't scale up burning. That's the only request. And that's what we did. And that's what solved for us.
I can imagine you guys not really needing capital for survival, then raising capital, and then suddenly your revenue flatlining. You must be thinking in your heads, probably this investment was jinxed. We shouldn't have raised money.
Yeah, in fact, like what you do is you raise capital and plus you start investing in team, right? So all of a sudden your OPEX goes up, right? We went to like a 30% negative EBITDA for a couple of months. And it was extremely stressful because honestly, I cannot sleep at night burning 1 crore a month. I'll be honest, right? So it was extremely dark times for a couple of months, right? But I think all of it said and done, I think is worth it. And it's good to be where we are today.
Awesome. This was really, really interesting, Rishubh. And thank you so much for being so candid with us. I'll quickly go into a section on our podcast. We'll take you another 10-15 minutes. And I'll ask you a few questions where we call it rapid fire. And you can respond back with one-liners, brief answers, whatever comes to your mind the first thing. Yeah, you ready?
Sounds good.
Okay. So 3 traits you would look for in a founding team today if you were to invest your own capital.
I want founders to do like the 0 to 1 journey, get your hands dirty, right? And third is be passionate. Like these 3 things is what I would look for in a founding team. Great. Extreme passion, right? Passion solves for everything, right? No matter, no CXO, nothing will solve the founder's passion, is what I believe.
It is said that you're the average of 5 people that you hang out most with. Who are those 5 people in your life?
I would say to some level it's true. For me, it's my wife. It's my, what do you call, parents. It's also, I think one is my college, I would say. While sort of people, let's say my college of IIT Roorkee is the one person I have, right? It's my sister. And I'm trying to learn some more traits now from my co-founder, Akash, also. So this is what my ecosystem will be.
Very nice. Where do you see Plix 5 years from now?
I see Plix skyrocketing like nobody's business. I want the goal of Plix, and that's why we partnered with Marico, is that we are present in every household.
Wow.
How Parachute is, the same way I would like Plix to be, with the thesis and genesis being that, you know how you have drinks on your dinner table, right? Which is maybe a cola, which is sugary beverage or a juice. Most probably people now have functional beverages which are good for skin, weight loss, digestion, which is a yummy drop fizzle sip of like a Plix effervescence, right? Like what green tea was 20 or 15 years back, right? When no one knew about it. Today it's there in every house. I want a Plix effervescence to be there, right? In every household, people drink a fizzy, tasty drink, which helps in functional benefits with no sugar.
In fact, I would like to confess something. After hearing you talk so passionately about these fizzy drinks, I have myself felt like, trying them at least once.
I'll send you a sample. It tastes great. You will not think you're consuming like a tablet which helps in like some functional benefit or
not a health drink, but a good enjoyable
drink. Great fizzy drink. Yeah, like I made, like, to be honest, I made cocktails with my effervescence, right? That's how yummy they taste. Yeah.
Very nice. One thing you want to change about the startup ecosystem in India?
So this is something very close to me, by the way. What I believe, right, is founders keep raising a lot of capital, Series A, Series B, Series C, right? A lot of them sometimes don't even know if they require it or they need it, right? And what they don't understand is that when you raise capital, right, there is a responsibility to you to give back, return that capital at 2x to 4x to that investor, right? And what you don't realize is maybe a Series A is fine, right? When you do a Series B, Series C, you don't realize that maybe the product does not have that TAM, or maybe you'll not be able to scale, right? Or maybe you have to restart the journey, and you shouldn't raise so much capital, right? Just for the fun of raising capital. Should be a very clear plan to accomplish and to build it. And capital should be used for hyperscaling, right? Not for like throwing money to a problem, right? Right. If you know you have some PMF, then you get raise capital, right? Just don't raise capital for the glory of it, right? And be very careful of what LickPref comes in, and understand the, what do you call, responsibilities of raising capital. It's something which I want people to understand more closely and clearly evaluate before they raise capital.
And to summarize, like you said before, once you have the flywheel in place, then only raise capital to hyperscale. Correct. Don't try to use the capital to solve for your PMF or your
PMF, right? Then what happens is then you are throwing money at the problem, right? And you are like just burning capital and not getting PMF, and it will keep burning, right? And what happens is, as you scale, then what you realize slowly is that you require more and more money to acquire that same customer, and the burn just increases. If you don't have PMF, right, it's going to be a problem. And then you and your investor both are in the same boat, right? And second thing is, don't oversell to investors just to raise capital, right? Be absolutely realistic of what the problem is, what the TAM is, what you can achieve. Because he might buy into your story and invest. But then if there is no PMF or there is no TAM eventually, and both of you all will be struggling, right? And raising capital is like a marriage. You're going to be in it for it together.
True. 3 investors in this Indian startup ecosystem that you look up to, and why?
I would not like to comment on that.
Any investor you follow whose content you like on LinkedIn, Twitter?
I like, but I don't think I'll have any in mind at this point of time. I do like a couple of investors, but I don't have someone strongly who I follow. Like I said, I'm not part of this ecosystem. I've been very new to it. It's just been a couple of years, but I don't really follow a lot on LinkedIn at this point of time.
3 founders from the Indian startup ecosystem you idolize, and why?
This is interesting. Let me give you some thought.
Yeah, sure. Take your time.
So I'll tell you one thing. So I follow this guy on LinkedIn, the Attenberg founder, Arindam Paul, right? And I feel he writes a lot of stuff, right, on marketing, which is really true, right? And honestly, I'm not a great writer, and while I can talk well, I cannot put pen to paper. And a lot of what he says, right, is something which I would like to share with the world too, right? It's so true. It's absolutely practical, right? It's real world life. And I think he's done phenomenally well with his brand. He's built it with true unit economics, he and his entire team, right? I know Arindam because, right, I don't know the other co-founders, but he's someone I believe who's done a great job. And
Choice, by the way.
a solid co-founder, right? With great PMF, with building a strong unit economics. So he's someone I definitely look up to, is what I would say. Apart from that,
It's okay.
I think that's one I have.
Tormented you enough. An interesting white space where Indian founders are yet not solving for right now.
I think, so I'm very close to the D2C space.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot more gaps, I think. I don't know if there is one which is there. If it is, I'll keep it very close to myself. I will not say it.
You'd like to start up on your own.
After 3 years. But I think 3 years later, I think the space will be very different. The learnings of today will not be relevant 3 years later. But I think something I'll recommend Indian founders to do is if you're building D2C, right, solve for AOE. Don't launch products that don't have AOE. It's a waste of time, is what I would say. I think that's what I'd say. I don't think there will be white spaces, but nothing which comes to mind right now.
Even if it's coming to your mind, you're not going to share.
I don't think I'll share it. I'll be honest.
Top 3 books you would recommend to founders?
Yeah, I don't read books. Yeah. I am a guy who reads, who in my childhood days would read a lot of Enid Blyton and the Famous Five and the Secret Seven. I remember, but apart from that, I've not read much books.
Got it. Last piece of advice to inspire people who want to start up on their own.
This is something, again, I think, which is great. So I'll tell people is, take the leap of faith. Right? And there is no harm in trying out. Because if you don't try out, right, the regret will be way too much for you, right? And this is what I say, right? What will happen if you start off, you lose 6 months of your life, you'll maybe lose 10 lakhs of capital, and you'll know the answer, right? But 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, I started off with 10 lakhs, and I think everything can be built with 10 to 30 lakhs maybe, right? Most businesses can, unless they're building something which is extremely tech heavy, which then maybe it's a different conversation. But otherwise, most businesses can be built with 10 to 20 lakhs of 30 lakhs of capital, right? And if you need that, you should take the leap of faith and start, because if you don't take the leap of faith, right, the loss will be what? Like if you don't take the loss will be 6 months of your life and maybe 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs of capital. But if that turns out to be true, right, you will have like a phenomenal story to say, and you will create value for yourself in like thousands, right? Right. And you will create so much value creation for your co-founders, people who have ESOPs, all the employees you'll handle, all the problems you will solve, right? So the reward to loss ratio is like 0.1 to 100. That's what I would say, right? So take the leap of faith, right? And there's nothing wrong in trying. In fact, this is what I tell my team, right? If you have an experiment to run, just run it. Because if the experiment doesn't turn out, you lose like 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs of capital, right? But if it's right, just imagine you generate profits for the company what crores, right? Over a period of 10 years. So why not do it?
I
totally
agree with that, Rishubh. In fact, when I asked you what is one thing you'd like to change about the startup ecosystem, I would personally want to change one thing about our ecosystem is we attach so much shame to failing, right? If a very good founder is even doing a little bit of something wrong, we are very quick to pounce upon him and call it out. We need to stop doing that. We need to let innovators build, and we need to celebrate even failures. The fear of failure needs to go for people to be able to start up without any fear.
I think it's learning, right? I think a lot of founders have built a couple of companies before they hit their big number, right? So, but there's a huge learning curve. I agree with you out here, right? That you will learn from every company you started up with. And I don't think there's any harm in failing, right? It's 6 months gone maybe, but what I said, right? Like if it's successful, right, you will change the world. So that's where the benefit lies. And I think the journey is amazing, right? When you start a company which does well, right? The last 3 years have been so exhilarating, right? The stories you tell, the people you meet, right? And the conversations you can have. I think I will take 10 failures for that. It's worth 10 failures is what I would put it to it. But that one success is worth those 10 failures. That's how great it is.
True. I totally agree. And it was very, very nice conversing with you, Rishubh. You're one of those passionate founders who actually oozes passion. And when I'm talking to you, I can really see that you love what you're doing. And you've been very, very candid. Absolutely no filter conversation. And I think this episode will bring a lot of learning for our listeners. Thank you so much for sparing time and coming to the show.
Absolutely. Nice. I think this is a good conversation. I like nice Saturday morning and afternoon. Well spent. I'd love to see the what do you call final output.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Rishubh.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Bye.